Hello, Pioneer viewers. Ukraine's offensive is resonating not only in Europe but also in the United States. The Ukrainian army taught Russian forces two valuable lessons in the Donetsk region. The location was the Pokrovsk-Dorelia junction. Russian forces had initially announced that they had occupied large areas in these two settlements. This was indeed the case. Russian tanks were attempting to break through Ukrainian defenses in both settlements. Tank bombardments had seriously weakened the Ukrainian army's defensive capabilities. Ukrainian Armed Forces Commander-in-Chief Alexander Syrsky confirmed at the beginning of the month that they had lost an area of approximately 5 square kilometers on the Pokrovsk axis. This loss was a narrow protrusion based on tree lines, created by small infiltrations from multiple axes. Russian troops had even begun to establish trenches, command centers, and weapon depots there. However, Kiev's military plan devastated the Russian army in Pokrovsk and Dorelia. Even the Moscow administration could not believe the situation its soldiers faced in these two areas. How did Ukraine succeed? Let's take a look together. The Pioneer is back. Don't forget that you can support us by subscribing and liking our videos in celebration of our return. From Ukraine's perspective, the priority in Pokrovsk was to quickly suppress the protruding flanks and establish a firelock on the retreat lines. Ukrainian military drones marked supply vehicles in the rear lines, and medium-range artillery and rocket systems bombarded these lines intermittently. Kiev's initial goal was to recapture the occupied areas in Pokrovsk. In the days that followed, waves of counterattacks were launched as HIMARS rocket systems and kamikaze-type UAVs descended like a nightmare on Russian troops and military convoys. In particular, every Russian convoy advancing towards Pokrovsk, including Russian main battle tanks, became a target for HIMARS rockets. Between 1 and 3 military convoys were caught in Ukrainian rocket attacks every day. Similarly, UAVs effectively prevented these Russian convoys from entering Pokrovsk. In addition, the Russian army's daily losses in Pokrovsk exceeded 100. Following the daily losses, positions in the area were cleared one by one. After these heavy offensive attacks, the Ukrainian side announced that it had recaptured an area exceeding 26 square kilometers in Pokrovsk and moved the control line to safer terrain thresholds. Kiev confirmed that it had managed to recover more than double the amount of territory it had lost. Recovering more than 5 times the lost area was decisive in terms of both morale and supply security. The recaptured areas included small elevations, road junctions, and ridges suitable for observation. This transformation was not the result of a single major attack, but rather a series of small, rapid maneuvers. Units identified the protrusions left by Russian forces on the map, like teeth marks, and encircled them by narrowing the flanks. UAV reconnaissance continued day and night, and at the end of each day, targets were listed for the next day. Firepower was divided into short bursts rather than a single salvo, and intensified as soon as movement was detected. Rescue and reinforcement vehicles were specifically tracked and included in the target set. This method focused on disrupting the rhythm and extinguishing the pressure rather than destroying with a single blow. Ground forces made short jumps to target buildings and trench lines as soon as the artillery fell silent. Flexible patrols and small defensive pockets were established in cleared areas, ready to retreat rather than fixed positions. This weakened the enemy's chance of returning the same day. Commander Sersky highlighted 2 points when explaining the situation. First, Russian forces made significant infiltrations in narrow areas in the first day of the month, but these were quickly repelled. Second, the pace of regrouping indicated that attempts to compensate for its initial losses fell within the hour-to-day range. The Dorelia axis presented a more severe example of this method. Sersky stated that Russian forces had captured an area of approximately 13.5 square kilometers near Dorelia in early August through infiltration. This gain took the form of a pocket containing several road junctions and strips of trees between fields. The recaptured areas were nodes connecting small elevations that provided directional angles and secondary supply routes. Ukrainian forces squeezed the pocket from both sides and cleared the interior by setting up a firelock on the retreat line. Looking at the overall picture, it was announced that Ukraine had recaptured more than 58 square kilometers in the last month. Ukrainian Armed Forces Commander-in-Chief Alexander Sersky published reports confirming these figures. This number did not only refer to gaps in the fields. Many small settlements and land thresholds were included in this total. The liberated areas included road junctions, small water crossings, and ridges suitable for forward observation. This selective approach focused not only on the area but on reclaiming usable land. During the small period, the number of Russian attacks remained high in both regions but did not intensify. Ukrainian sources reported that over 350 Russian attacks were repelled in the Pokrovsk direction in just 1 month. This figure demonstrated the persistence of Russian forces' efforts but their limited impact. In the first days of September, the 425th Assault Regiment, known as Skala, cleared 2 villages, demonstrating that the line was not merely being defended. Operations in Novochin and Udachin led to brief but intense clashes within and around the settlements. Both settlements were reported to have been cleared of Russian forces. The Ukrainian Air Assault Forces 7th Rapid Response Corps clearly identified the Russian forces' intention to expand the grey zone borders around Pokrovsk. The attempts began with small trenches dug at night, machine gun nests, and partial positions opened along the terrain line. The Ukrainian side is responding to this risk with thermal observation and mini UAVs. Positions are marked on the first night. Indirect fire is opened the next day, and suppression teams move in on the third day. These suppressions, carried out before the positions are completed, extinguish the initiative at the outset. Possible scenarios for Pokrovsk in the coming weeks depend on 2 variables. The first is the impact of weather conditions on terrain and armored motorized mobility as the rainy and muddy season approaches. Passages may narrow and water crossings may become more critical. The second is constant pressure on rear depots and transfer nodes. If this pressure continues, the intensity of attacks reflected on the front may again struggle to find rhythm. If the defense maintains reconnaissance and fire synchronization, these results may be short-lived rather than permanent. All these results are clear and supported by numbers. The monthly total liberation of 58 square kilometers in Pokrovsk and Orelia showed that these 2 examples are not exceptions, but the norm. The Russian army's flanking pressures, attempts to cut off supplies, and the use of Marines on narrow fronts were stopped by terrain and fire thresholds. As long as these conditions remain unchanged, it will not be the only major attack in Pokrovsk that will go down in history, but rather the sum of small and swift counterattacks. So, what do you think? How is Ukraine still maintaining its capacity to resist? Please share your thoughts in the comments. We read and value your opinions.